a stranger from far west Texas. And out of respect for your folk roots, I want to tell you that as we were taking the Guthrie exit to come to your house, I was reminded of being in Pampa, Texas, when we were campaigning in every single one of the 254 counties of Texas. And you go to the drugstore in Pampa, and that's where Woody Guthrie worked. I believe that's where he bought his first guitar and perhaps began working on some of the masterpieces that would distinguish not just Woody Guthrie and not just Texas and Pampa, but the United States of America. And it's one of these great stories that I like to tell about Texas. It's not something that we typically associate with my home state, but very important to me. And I love that we have that connection in music together. So I bring you greetings from my hometown of El Paso. It's one half of the largest binational community in the Western Hemisphere, with Ciudad Juarez, with southern Doña Ana County in New Mexico, where these three states come together. These two nations are joined, not separated by the Rio Grande River. There are 3 million of us, 2 languages, 2 countries, 2 cultures, 2 histories, who form one people, something far greater than the sum of our parts or the number of people. It's absolutely magical. And if you have not been to El Paso and Ciudad Juarez, we invite you to come out and see it for yourself. It was there in Juarez that I took my wife on our first date, which was a blind date. Picked her up at the home that she was staying at in El Paso, not a city that she was from or familiar with, and took her over to the Kentucky Club on Avenida Juarez, where they invented the margarita. That's right. Had an amazing, magical night that obviously was a success because within the year we were married. A year later, Ulysses was born. Within a couple of years, maybe a little bit less, Molly, and then Henry thereafter. And last night, Amy was sending me updates from Ulysses' baseball game in Las Cruces, New Mexico, sending me little videos that she was taking through the cyclone fencing of him at bat. Was walked at his first at bat, stole second, slid right through the legs of the second baseman, safe, got an RBI on his second at bat, and as you can imagine, made his dad so proud and so grateful that Amy would send those videos, those pictures, and those updates to me in my hotel room in Des Moines last night. And so very much on my mind, those kids, my wife, our hometown, but they're very much a part of why I'm running to serve you as President of the United States. It is their judgment that I fear, the knowledge that they will know sooner or later what we were up against in 2019 and 2020. The millions who were unable to see a doctor or provide for their kids. The kids who are behind cyclone fencing right now, under a bridge in El Paso, having traveled 2,000 miles from some of the deadliest countries on the face of the planet. Much of those 2,000 miles on foot, some of it atop a train known as the Beast or La Bestia, not inside, in the seats. Showing up penniless, not knowing the language, strangers in a strange land. And this is how our country has welcomed them. The most powerful, the wealthiest country on the face of the planet. The most powerful country the world has ever known in the history of human civilization. And we will be defined by the way in which we respond. Let us not be tempted to lay the blame at the feet of one man, no matter the office that he holds or the party to which he belongs. In a democracy, this is on every single one of us. And my kids will know that even if they don't know that today. And they'll know that we had an opportunity because we come from that community that in so many ways positively defines this country. El Paso is also one of the safest cities in the United States of America. A quarter of those with whom I live were born in another country, chose us, came here from the world over to do better for themselves and their kids, just like I want to do better for myself and my kids. But they also came here because they were called to us to contribute to our shared success, to our greatness, and they have. We are the safest, or one of the safest cities in the U.S. because we are a city of immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees. Their very presence makes us stronger, makes us more successful. And yes, though this flies in the face of the rhetoric from the president and what many people in this country believe, it improves the security of the United States. When I think about the fact that in Texas, and I'm learning in Iowa, far too many educators and school teachers and counselors and nurses and school bus drivers and cafeteria workers are working a second or a third job just to make ends meet, though they have the most important job in front of them, that child whose lifelong love of learning can be unlocked if that educator can focus on that child. And once that is unlocked, that kid is unstoppable. This country, by extension, is unbeatable. I want to make sure that they're paid a living wage, that they have just that one job, the most important job. I want to make sure that they're not having to operate under the pressure of a high stakes, high pressure, standardized test, something that you were aware of from your time on the school board, of allowing those teachers to do what they were called to do, knowing full well they're not going to become wealthy in their lives, that out of their own pocket, they're going to pay not just for the decorations in the classroom, not just for the supplies for the kid who forgot to bring them from home, but for that hot meal, for that child who's on free and reduced breakfast and lunch, but has no meal to look forward to when she goes home from school. That set of clothes for the kid who's shown up in the same jeans and t-shirt every single day of the week because he doesn't have another change of clothes at home. So often it is that educator who pays for the necessities of those kids. I want to make sure that we back that educator. And I want us all to think about how our lives have been changed by those public school educators. The reason we named our firstborn Ulysses is because we didn't have the guts to name him Odysseus. Reading the Odyssey with the help of a school teacher who could unlock those stories for me changed my life. Opened up opportunities I didn't know existed. And when I learned from high school seniors at El Paso High that they're now reading the abridged version because they have to set aside so many days for standardized test prep in that school, to me it shows that we have our priorities upside down. When I look at an economy where it's not just school teachers and educators working 2 and 3 jobs, it's so many millions of our fellow Americans who are working their hearts out, their hands, their feet, everything that they've got, their heads, and then they've got to go work a second job just to make ends meet for their families. They're the same families that cannot read to their child before the first day of kindergarten or first grade. It helps to explain why so many kids at 5 years old on the first day of kindergarten are 10 months back in reading comprehension, 10 months back or 12 months back in math. There's never a moment to press pause and to catch up. Those kids are going to be less likely to graduate from high school, to be college ready or career ready. They're going to be unable to shoulder their fair share of the burden going forward, and also to provide their potential and their genius for us. The jobs that they could work, the family they could raise, the poetry that they may write, the businesses that they could start, the land that they might be able to farm. All of that is lost to all of us when we fail to make the investment in one another. So not just a world-class pre-K through 12 system, college that is affordable for all at a time of $1.5 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. 10% of those carrying it are in default right now, unable to manage the burden that is on their backs. It's bad for them. It's even worse for us as an economy, as a country, and as a society. So let's stop digging the hole. Let's make sure that community college is free to all Americans. Let's make sure that public serving four-year institutions do not add debt to those who are trying to improve themselves so that they can improve their prospects and that of their family, their community, and of their country. Let's make investments in people by making sure that women earn the same wages that men earn in every single job for equal work performed and equal value provided. Let's make sure that if you want to take care of a family member, yourself, raise your child, that there is paid family leave universally in this country that allows you to do what you need to do for yourself without sacrificing your job or your income or your ability to pay the rent. Let's ensure that we outlaw discrimination in this country, which is alive and well in this country, including in the workplace. In Texas, you can be fired for your sexual orientation. In Texas, you can be denied the ability to adopt a child because you are too gay. In Texas and in so much of the country, we need to ensure that we have full civil rights for every single one of our Americans. Signing the Equality Act into law will guarantee that and ensure that we do a better job of bringing out the very best from every single one of us. But if we're going to talk about equality, if we're going to talk about justice, if we're going to talk about civil rights, let's also acknowledge this. That in some parts of this country, in too many of our communities, there are some, by the color of their skin, who are not able to fully participate in the success of our democracy, of our economy. Texas ranked 50th in the country prior to 2018 in voter turnout, not because we love our democracy any less than you do here in Iowa, but the courts found in 2017 that some people were drawn out of a congressional district, drawn out of a reason to vote, drawn out of their very democracy, solely based on the color of their skin. You can use your license to carry a firearm. That's not working either. We may have to dispense with the mic. Is it working now? Okay. You can use your license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at the ballot box in Texas. You cannot use your student ID at the University of Texas at Austin or Texas Southern University or Paula Quinn College to prove who you are at the ballot box to predictable results and outcomes. So we need a new Voting Rights Act to bring everyone into our democracy. We need same-day and automatic voter registration in every single part of the country. We need to end the practice of gerrymandering where members of Congress are choosing their own voters instead of the other way around. Sorry, I want to make sure, should I just not use the microphone or is it working? Okay, sorry. I want to make sure also, and it's one of the reasons we don't take a dime of political action committee money from anyone for any interest. So we get this big money out of our politics. Corporations are not people. Money is not speech. They shouldn't be allowed to spend unlimited amounts of money to purchase the outcomes of our elections and the legislation before members of Congress. But that is exactly what is happening in institutions that have been captured and corrupted by those who have the money to purchase that access and those outcomes. Sorry, this is feeding back. But a political democracy is only possible if we have something approaching an economic democracy in this country. Those are, más o menos, the words of one of the great progressive leaders who followed the last concentration of wealth and power and privilege that we had in this country in the Gilded Age. Out of that came people like Theodore Roosevelt, who said those words or something approaching those words. And what he meant is that this concentration of power and wealth and privilege must be broken up. There's going to be opportunity for all of us in this country. Every child and every man and every woman must be able to see a future for themselves in this country, or else this country will have no future as a democracy. And so I want to make sure that when we're talking about opportunity for all, that we really mean it. We mean it when we talk about education. We mean it when we talk about jobs, that one job should be enough. We mean it when we talk about universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care so that you are well enough to go to school, pursue your passion, reveal your genius to the rest of this country. And we mean it when we are talking about justice. Yep. In a country that hosts the largest prison population on the face of the planet, disproportionately comprised of people of color, too many there for non-violent drug crimes, including, get this, possession of cannabis, a substance that is legal or decriminalized in the majority of the states of the Union. And yet we're still locking people up, disproportionately of color, though Americans of all races, across all races, use marijuana at roughly the same rate. Only some, more than others, are going to be arrested, are going to be locked up upon release, checking a box on every employment application form that says that they have a conviction, making it less likely that they get the job. Now will no longer be eligible for student loans to better themselves through higher education so that they can better all of us with what they do in their lives. We need real justice reform, and that means more than just ending the prohibition on marijuana, though we must. It means more than just expunging the arrest records for those caught with possession of something that's legal in most of the country. We must do that as well. But we must also end prisons for profit in this country. We must end a caste cash bail system that keeps some people in jail because they are too poor to get out of jail.
Right.
And we must end a war on drugs.
Yes.
It's become a war on people, some people more than others. And this, the hardest of all for us to do. In our 243 years, we have never yet accomplished this. Fully confront the legacy of slavery, of segregation, of Jim Crow, of continuing suppression in our communities. It is alive and well, and not just in the state of Texas. There is 10 times the wealth today in white America than there is in black America. And that is not an accident. That is 100% by design. Whether it is redlining, preventing African Americans in this country for generations, including in the lifetimes of those here in this room, from being able to build the wealth that they themselves can enjoy or pass on to their kids, that will serve as a seed capital for starting a small business or pursuing your higher education or whatever it is you're supposed to do in your lives, criminalizing entire communities based on their color and locking others out of the ballot box. This is what we have done to our fellow Americans. Wittingly on the part of some, unwittingly on the part of others. Regardless, all of us need to know the truth and the facts and the full story, or we will never begin the work of repairing the damage done and preventing these injustices from being committed again and again and again. I want to make sure that whoever you are, wherever you come from, to whoever you pray, whoever you love, however many generations you can count yourself an American, or whether you just got here yesterday, that before we are anything else, we are Americans first. We find a way to come together around these otherwise intractable challenges, not as Democrats or Republicans, big city or small town, but as Americans. It's the way that I served in the Congress. It's the way that I campaigned across those 254 counties in Texas. It's the way that I introduced myself to you here today. I want to make sure that at this defining moment of truth for Ulysses and Molly and Henry and your kids and the generations that will follow us, the people of the future, that when we had the moment to act, we did so together and we were not found wanting. That's why I'm running to serve you as President of the United States of America for everybody. Thank you for welcoming us. Thank you for opening up your home. We brought Suzette a bottle of wine, and I said, while for some people it may be too early to open that, depending on our performance today, we will decide. So, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll do my best to bring as many voices into the conversation. Sir, back here, and then I'll come over here.
We're going to try this.
Okay, we're going to try this. All right, that seems to be working. There we go. Maybe down a little bit because it's feeding back.
Beto, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if any intelligence came out of our current president's mouth, it was about funding of the infrastructure, and it's never gained any traction. And I'm sure, traveling around the way you do, you see the plight we have. We have over 300 bridges in Iowa right now that need immediate work and thousands that need some work. Your feeling on funding of the infrastructure?
There's about $4 trillion in outstanding infrastructure need in this country. $4 trillion. Those people of the future who I keep referring to, they will not believe when they read in their history books that in 2017, 2018, when we had $21 trillion in debt, $4 trillion in outstanding infrastructure needs, our solution was to cut a $2 trillion tax cut that went to corporations and the very wealthiest in the face of all this need and opportunity. Because connected to that $4 trillion an outstanding infrastructure need are the jobs connected with putting that infrastructure in place, are the communities right now who are disconnected, who don't have highways that work, bridges that are safe, rail that they can depend on, broadband internet that allows them to finish their education, look for a job, start a business, get what they grow to markets around the world, find a date on Tinder, whatever you want to do. If you cannot get online, you will not be able to do it. And so, absolutely, this, as you suggest, is something that on a bipartisan basis we should be able to accomplish. It helps red districts, it helps blue districts equally. And I remember when I was talking about this, and this is a connection to politics, and our ability to perform in areas that we've long written off, and I'm talking about the Democratic Party, as too red to compete in. We were in one of those communities in Silverton, Texas, during the Senate campaign in the Silverton Library. And I was talking about the fact that half of rural Texas does not have reliable broadband internet, and how the federal government needs to step up and partner with those communities and make the investment. And before I can finish getting the words out of my mouth, a gentleman stands up, says, I was in first grade in 1937. Our community did not have electricity. But then Congressman, not yet Senator or Vice President or President, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and President Franklin Delano Roosevelt saw the opportunity, did not give us a handout, did not offer us pity or sympathy, said if you can cooperatively join forces and come to the table, we will meet you halfway with the Rural Electrification Administration. And so this guy said, the day before first grade, I was able to read at night by electric candlelight, just like the kids in Chicago or London or Tokyo. We were competitive, we mattered, we counted, and this government proved it to us. And by the way, he said, from that day forward, my daddy was a yellow dog Democrat. So when we show up, when we listen, when we invest in communities everywhere, there's a political return for sure, but our economy is performing at a much higher level. It is an investment that pays returns well above the initial cost. Thank you for the question.
I think she has a question right over here.
Okay, I promised you I would come to you, and then I'll come back here.
You're done?
I know there are so many issues, that I want cybersecurity to be an issue. And just as citizens, we are fighting the hacking all the time and the danger to our identities being stolen. But even in the bigger picture, with our country is under cyber attack. And it's worrisome that I feel like this isn't being addressed. I mean, when other countries can take down our power grid, they can steal national secrets, and it's not being paid attention to, and I want to know what your thoughts are about it.
So first of all, your concern is shared by me, and I think many in this country. It is fully justified from what I've been able to read publicly and what I was able to see as a member of Congress in classified briefings. It's compounded by the fact that the leader of our country does not believe or purports not to believe what you just said when on a stage in Helsinki, Finland, with the leader of the country that has been seeking to undermine our democracy, to attack us through our connections on the internet, said that he believed that guy, not our intelligence community or our country. So we really have our work cut out for us. You add to that the technology companies in this country today, whether it is Facebook, whether it is Apple, or whether it is the companies that hold our private financial information and are using the internet, have been under attack, and in many cases have not taken the appropriate safeguards and have not been transparent in the steps that they are taking to protect us. I think one of the things that we can do going forward is to better regulate these large technology companies like the utilities that they functionally are, instead of allowing us to be the products that they trade and sell and are consumed by others, some with malintent. It's all connected also to the way that members of Congress respond to those who give them money. In 2017, Congress voted to approve a measure that would allow these internet service providers to sell your private browsing data. Think of all the weirdest places you've been on the internet, and now know that without your consent, that is sold to the highest bidder. Makes no sense at all because it goes against the consumer protection and our interests in our own privacy. And yet it makes a hell of a lot of sense if you understand that for members of Congress to secure their re-election, they've got to go to these big political action committees that can write $10,000 checks at a time. Follow the money, and we can begin to explain some of the otherwise inexplicable outcomes. So yes, having a president who believes in what you just said, the attacks that we are undergoing right now, who wants to strengthen protections in our private lives and also access to the ballot box. We know from several secretaries of state throughout this country that their voting systems were infiltrated. Ensuring that we have a paper trail for every ballot cast is some insurance or a safeguard against these attacks. But beefing up regulation and oversight, investing in our intelligence community, ensuring that we have the resources to meet the threats that we face today is absolutely paramount. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
I'm extremely lucky that 8 of my 10 grandchildren are growing growing up in a bilingual household, two Hispanic fathers. And my daughter now lives in Spain with her Spanish husband and their 3 children. In Spain, English is taught beginning in pre-K. I just got to watch a video of my 2nd grader grandchild doing a presentation completely in English along with her classmates, because as many times as they can come up with an opportunity to speak in English, they do. So what I find when I travel to Spain is that the people are much more friendly, and I feel they're more friendly because they understand my language. And so I'm wondering, what about us teaching our children Spanish from the time they're in preschool versus waiting until they're juniors and seniors, freshmen, whatever, in high school? Because to me, the more commonality we have with other people, the more friendly they're going to be to us, the more we're going to understand each other. And I think it will help bring down some of the fear that sometimes people erroneously have. It will make us all more worldly, and I actually think it also makes us smarter. Now, that my daughter can tell you because she's a linguist. That if you have 2 words at the age of 3 for a cat, gato and cat, dog, perro, dog, your vocabulary is extremely expanded,
Yeah.
and it will help you throughout your entire school years because your mind is so much more open. So what is your thought about bringing in Spanish into our schools and just making it mandatory like anything else?
So first of all, I like the idea a lot, and I'll just tell you from experience. You mentioned growing up, and we're now raising our kids in the largest binational community in the hemisphere. Almost everyone speaks both English and Spanish, or speaks some English and some Spanish, or speaks Spanglish, which is the confluence of the 2. In my parents' generation, were you to speak Spanish in the hallways of the elementary school that my kids attend now, you would be suspended. If you kept it up, you would be expelled. In my generation at Mesita Elementary, great public school, there was 45 minutes of Spanish every day. My kids are in a full dual language program. So, Monday they'll be learning math in Spanish. Tuesday they'll be learning math in English. They're not just reading and writing and speaking and listening in both languages. They're calculating and computing and thinking and existing in both worlds. And I really strongly believe that makes us more economically competitive, to have a labor force that is comfortable in both cultures and in both languages. I agree with you that that's got to make you smarter. I mean, I'm not a linguist or a scientist, but it feels that way. And it's really beautiful. It's making the most of who we are and where we are. And I got to think it has an impact on some of the other things that I shared. We're one of the safest cities in the United States of America, and that safety was purchased not through walls or militarization. It was purchased through treating people with kindness and respect and dignity. And when folks, regardless of their immigration status, feel comfortable participating in the success of a community, they also feel comfortable reporting a crime or serving as a witness or testifying in a trial. By contrast, when we make people afraid of who they are or where they are, we are demonstrably less safe. I'll give you an example. There was a woman, undocumented immigrant, living in El Paso, who was beaten by her boyfriend, sought a protective order in one of our courts of law in the county courthouse. That protective order was granted against that boyfriend who was threatening her life. As she's walking out of the courtroom, there are 2 plainclothes Border Patrol agents who take her into custody. First time in my 46 years in El Paso that I know that has happened. It happened under this administration, no accident, they are connected. But beyond what that did to that woman, do you think other women now or other men are going to come forward and report this kind of domestic violence and abuse? Do you think they're going to say, hey, the neighbors next door, there's something going on there, and for their safety, I want the police to come check it out? No, it has a chilling effect on our community, and it makes us less safe. So absolutely, let's make the most of who we are, our connections to the rest of the world. It's not just better for those who are treated with respect, it's better for our safety, our security, our economic success, our long-term prosperity. So I'd love to see more of that in more schools across the country. And by the way, that was devised not out of central planning in Washington, D.C. not through a private school, and no offense to private schools, if that's where you choose to send your kids, but those are public school educators who came up with that curriculum and with that program to make sure that those kids were achieving at their best. Thank you for the question. Yes, ma'am.
You are from an oil state, and I would like to hear what you have to say about climate change.
Thanks for the question about climate change. Those scientists to whom we must listen, who told us that the natural disasters that we are experiencing right now, Missouri River Basin receiving 4 times the runoff of a typical year, and actually the greatest level of runoff that we've seen since we've been keeping records about the Missouri River. The 58 inches of rain that fell in Houston, Texas, in my home state, which is a landfall record from the sky, as long as we've been keeping them in North America. The third 500-year flood in Southeast Texas in just 5 years. And, we might joke that they should be good for 1,500 years, but they're not. Because those scientists say that it's not a natural disaster. It's not deliverance by God. It is in large part human created. Our emissions, our excesses, our inaction in the face of the science, going all the way back to the 1980s, when there was the beginning of the political will on a bipartisan basis to do something about it. That's what's causing these floods, these fires, these storms, these droughts through which our farmers attempt to persist and are beginning to fail. There was a young farmer who came to one of our town halls in West Texas. And she said, look, I'm missing my son's basketball game. I'm going to be seen in the company of a Democrat. And I'm coming to something that I'm not comfortable doing, and I'm speaking in public. But the reason I'm doing this is because I live and try to raise on the same farm that my grandparents lived, that my parents lived. But what they planted and grew is not growing right now when I plant it. Climate change, she told me, is not something I've got to prepare my kids for. It is something we are living through right now. Those same scientists say that if we warm another degree Celsius, train is off the tracks. You will not be able to live in Houston, Texas, or Charleston, South Carolina anymore. You may not be able to live in El Paso, Texas, or the desert Southwest. It may not sustain human life. And if you're concerned about 400,000 apprehensions at our border with Mexico, wait until some countries in the Western Hemisphere can no longer sustain human life. Then you will have a crisis when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers. But those same scientists, to your question, also tell us there are between 10 to 12 years within which we can act boldly and decisively, collectively as a country. Cannot be done by half measure or by half the country. Cannot just be big cities and Democrats. It's got to be all of us working together. And then we've got to bring the world together, because China has 3 to 4 times the number of coal-fired plants that the United States has. As India comes online, as Africa comes online, we really have a global problem. If we stopped emitting every single greenhouse gas that we're emitting today in the United States, that still would not be enough. And so we also have to assume global leadership and return to our role as the indispensable nation. We can convene the other planets, the other countries of the planets, and the other planets, if they are out there, to do what no other country can do for itself or for the world. And so how do we do that? Iowa is a leader, as you know, not just in bioenergy, but in wind. You generate more wind as a share of your total energy portfolio than does any other state. Texas generates more wind in absolute terms than any other state. And we're closing the ranks when it comes to solar. My hometown of El Paso, one of the sunniest places on the planet, is building out utility scale solar right now. The 2 fastest growing jobs in the United States of America are wind energy jobs and solar energy jobs right now. So it's good for the planet, it's good for the next generation, it's good for those who are looking for work and meaning and purpose and a paycheck in our communities today. But we're gonna have to make some tough political decisions. We have to transition as quickly as possible off a dependence on fossil fuels. We have to stop emitting greenhouse gases, and we're gonna have to pull more of the carbon that's in the air today back into the ground. Rural Iowa is also showing the way. When those who farm say that they want to do their part, they want to be incentivized in the Farm Bill to plant cover crops that pull more of that carbon out. They want to have access to the technologies that allow for precision tilling and farming, so less of the carbon that's in the soil right now is disturbed. When we're concerned about over-cultivation, especially with some of the economic incentives for corn, There's a political mechanism, a policy solution to that as well. The Farm Bill has a conservation fund that would allow farmers to keep more of their land uncultivated, allow them to make a profit while they're doing that. We've been rating it like a piggy bank in every iteration of the Farm Bill. We need to restore that funding and then increase it substantially. Those farmers want to do their part just like anybody else wants to do their part. But if they're not making a profit, that means that that farm closes down. It's not passed on to the next generation. It may be subdivided for housing or turned over to a conglomerate or a corporation that will not have the same mindfulness for the community or for their social responsibility. So we can all do our part, and it's serious, and I want to make sure that we are leading on it right now. Thank you for the question. We have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am. This will be our last question.
Okay, you, first of all, I wanted to say thank you for writing this book.
Thank you.
I read it, and that was actually what convinced me to drive down 5 hours to knock on doors for you.
Wow.
I'm from Chicago South Side. We're on the end of the pipeline. This
Yeah.
meant so much to me.
Thank you.
But I wanted to, so 2 questions. First of all, about wind. You just mentioned, I was recently at a county meeting in a different state where residents in the rural areas sometimes perceive it as city people wanting to impose windmill farms on them because they keep bringing up issues like noise and shadow flicker, and unfortunately Trump has played into this with the noise cancer stuff. I live by an Air Force base. Last time I checked, I don't have cancer. But how do we begin to have these conversations where we try to convince people that, and the wind companies for that matter, to reach a solution that would, first of all, with the shadow flicker problem, I haven't seen any wind company yet, at least in the area I live in, to say, hey, we can put timers on this. We can, when the sun's low in the sky, oh sure, let's turn it off for a few hours. That way it's at least a win-win, and the residents won't universally oppose it the minute they think it's the not in my backyard thing. So that's my first question. My second question, I'm from a red state, from the Texas, the Great Lakes region, Indiana. And you visited every other state in the Great Lakes region. I noticed because I saw it on your tracker. I saw it on your videos. When will you visit Indiana? Because Obama won our state.
Yeah.
You've almost, in a sense, been a red state champion for a lot of us. You've talked about red staters being written off. Please don't write Indiana off. I know we're not the first primary state, but next time you drive through the Great Lakes, please visit us.
Yeah.
We can be reached. Obama showed it. Senator Donnelly showed it.
You got it. We will come to Indiana. Thank you for the invitation. And I want to make sure, if we're going to get your contact information, I would love for you to introduce us at an event just like this one today. So if you're willing to do that, I'm absolutely excited to come. And Cynthia, before you get that, I want to just make sure I answer her question. All of this stuff is connected in my mind. And I'll give you just one small example. There's a community called Roscoe outside of Sweetwater in Texas. It's a farming community. I went to the high school in Roscoe because I was having dinner the night before in Sweetwater, and one of those school teachers, this keeps going in and out, so one of those school teachers at Roscoe High School was having dinner at the same place in Sweetwater, and she said, we have an extraordinary high school like you. She said, though Roscoe's not on your itinerary, I want you to come see it. And we said, absolutely, let's do it. So we showed up to Roscoe High School the next day, home of the Plow Boys and the Plow Girls, and learned that 90% of graduating high school seniors graduate not just with a high school diploma, but with an associate's degree, without taking on a single dime of debt, and many of them are graduating with a remote FAA pilot's license. Now, how is this connected? The way that they're doing maintenance inspections on the wind turbines that dominate the skyline in Roscoe, Texas, is by flying these drones up there to do the work. It's high value, in demand, high skill, high wage work, and 18 and 19-year-olds in Roscoe who would have left Roscoe if those jobs did not exist are staying in Roscoe. And oh, by the way, those wind turbines have added depth to the property tax base that have allowed them to pay for that associate's degree program in that high school that keeps those young people in the community, that allows them to earn a living wage while they are there. The people of Roscoe, those farmers, that rural community, they see the value. I don't need to tell them anything. They're telling me that they want to see us make those kinds of investments so that their communities can thrive. In the infrastructure that was mentioned earlier, the big transmission lines that no private company is going to invest in on their own. We'll need some government support and partnership to do that. Relieving ourselves from a reliance on fossil fuels and ending the subsidies for oil and gas so that wind and solar and renewable energy can compete effectively. So I love the way that you approach this. Let's listen to one another and make sure that we understand legitimate concerns that some people have, that we answer the lies that are told, especially by those in these positions of power, that wind turbines cause cancer. His operational tool is fear. Make you afraid of wind turbines, make you afraid of Mexican immigrants, make you afraid of Muslims, make you afraid of yourself. Let's not buy into that. We are not a fearful people. We are courageous, we are bold, we are confident, and so let's march steadily into the future in the right direction. That means renewable energy. And it means going to Indiana. Okay. Cynthia says that was our last question, but I just want to say thank you to each of you for asking these questions, for your comments, for your suggestions, for hosting us today. We'll not forget this, and we hope to be able to come back. Thank you all very much.